girls, and welcome to Chapter 2 of the Enchanted Classroom. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I will begin. Chapter 2, The Hat. Erica was always up early, but since she had joined Berriton Primary, she was getting up earlier each day. She would wake up as the sun rose and be so excited about seeing her friends, Miss Hart and her little buddy Rub, that she couldn't get back to sleep. Most of all, she was excited about going back to the Enchanted Classroom and seeing what new things would happen that day. Does that ever happen to you? That you wake up so early, excited about something, that you just lie in bed, unable to get back to sleep? Well, imagine that every single day. Today was a Tuesday, and as usual, Erica was up and dressed before her mum and dad had even opened their eyes. They found her in the kitchen eating a bowl of cereal that she had made herself. She had even poured the milk without spilling a drop. Today she was having Weetabix. The advert on TV told her that it was fuel for big days. And, well, every day in the Enchanted Classroom was a big day, so Erica had insisted her mum bought it for her. Erica's mum and dad joined her in the kitchen. Then they followed their normal routine of coffee, getting dressed, getting Timothy up. Still a nightmare. Second coffee, and then go, go, go. Of course, in the middle of that was Erica's trip to the hair salon. Today, Erica had chosen a half up and half down with her favourite purple bow. When Erica arrived at school, she greeted the deputy head, Mr. Whiteley, with a grin and a cheery, "Hello!" It seemed that Mrs. Cobb, the headmistress, didn't like standing on the gate in the mornings. Perhaps it was too cold, or perhaps she was always in very important meetings. Either way, it was always nice to see Mr. Whiteley. In the classroom, Erica plopped herself on her chair, which was red today. It's always exciting to see what colour the chairs will be. William W. says that once they were rainbow coloured and each leg was a different colour. Erica and Emily started chatting straight away about the episode of Make It With Me they'd watched last night. They both loved that arts and craft TV show and always talked about the amazing things the presenter Mimi had made. Last night, she had cut up an old plastic egg box and turned it into some goggles, which she pretended were X-ray goggles. Of course they weren't, but it was fun to pretend. Rub waddled over with a pencil for Erica and plopped it down in front of her. Then he sat listening to their conversation whilst picking at the loose rubbings around his legs. "Morning, Rub," Erica said, wiggling her finger at him. Rub gave Erica a big smile and waved his little hand at her, then went back to picking at his edges. "So," drawled Emily, "shall I come over at the weekend and we can have a go at making some of Mimi's crafts? Would your mum and dad mind?" But before Erica could reply, Miss Hart interrupted them. "I am sure Erica's parents would be delighted, but do you think this is the right time to be discussing playdates? Or do you think that perhaps you should be doing the work I laid out for you this morning?" The girls giggled. Even when Miss Hart was cross, she managed to say it in such a nice way. That's why everyone liked her. Today she was wearing a pink cord dress with flowers around the bottom, and she had her long hair tied in bunches which swung around her when she walked. Erica and Emily got to work on their morning news report and had nearly finished when Miss Hart called everyone to the carpet. As Erica got up, she felt something wet on her leg, almost like something had licked her. But when she looked down, no, there was nothing there. Strange, she thought. "Boys and girls," said Miss Hart, "I have something very exciting to tell you." A hush came over the class as they all leaned in a little closer to hear the news. What could it be? Perhaps another new child was joining the class, or perhaps Miss Cobb was coming to read to them, or perhaps they were going to go on a school trip and visit somewhere. "I went shopping at the weekend," continued Miss Hart. You could see the confusion on the children's faces. How was this exciting news? Their mums went shopping every weekend. And I found an adorable little shop tucked away in a quiet lane, selling all kinds of hats and scarves and other bits and bobs. The children were still waiting for Miss Hart to get to her point. "So I bought a big bag full of hats to add to our dressing-up corner," Miss Hart said triumphantly. The children looked at each other, clearly disappointed that Miss Hart's exciting news turned out to be a bag of hats. Old hats. Miss Hart produced a large Hessian bag and started taking the hats out one by one. She was clearly pleased with her purchases, even if the children weren't. There was an old black bowler hat with a little dent in the top where it clearly had been sat on. There was an old felt army officer's cap with a brass badge on the front. There was a bright red trilby which looked a bit like a gangster's hat, but definitely not the colour gangsters would wear. There was a small straw hat with a blue bow, which looked like it might have been a child's school hat many years ago. And finally there was a big floppy felt hat with a large purple feather, which was held in place by a thin piece of ribbon. Miss Hart asked if any of the children would like to try any of the hats on, and a few children popped their hands up. First of all, Ed chose the army officer's hat and marched around the room saying, "Hop, 2, 3, 4, hop, 2, 3, 4, much to everyone's delight. Then Lucy asked if she could try the straw hat on, and it fitted perfectly. Everyone gasped at how lovely she looked. She skipped over to the large gold-framed mirror in the dressing-up area and admired herself for the next few moments before rejoining her friends on the carpet. Next, Roger asked if he could try the floppy hat, you know, the one with the feather. He thought it was most like a pirate hat and would work well with his eye patch, which he was still insisting on wearing. So Miss Hart passed it over and he pulled it onto his head. There was a flash and Roger disappeared. Miss Hart gasped loudly. The children froze in shock. In the place Roger had been standing was a small plastic pirate. It was about 5 centimetres tall and looked very much like a Lego version of Roger. It had Roger's grey trousers, Roger's purple jumper, Roger's eye patch, and of course a fabulous pirate hat complete with a plastic purple feather. The little toy was clutching a cutlass and had a pirate perched on his shoulder. "Roger!" cried Miss Hart. "What on earth has happened?" All the children then joined in with different cries of, "Roger, are you okay? And can you hear me? And what should we do? What should we do? Oh, Roger!" "Calm down, everyone," interjected Miss Hart, clearly having managed to calm herself down a little. "Let's not panic, let's think. Now, what changed? What was Roger doing when he changed into that toy?" "Well, he'd just put the hat on," said Erica without a moment's hesitation. "I told you she was a clever little girl." Of course, replied Miss Hart. "So let's try taking it off. Jack, would you please do the honours?" Miss Hart knew that Jack was very good at Lego. In fact, a Lego expert. So when Jack bent down and carefully reached out towards Roger, she knew he would be in good hands. Jack used his thumb and forefinger to carefully prise the plastic hat off Roger's head, and the hat immediately started to grow in his hand until it was back to being the same old felt floppy hat as before. The children watched Roger and waited with everything crossed. No one spoke. Then suddenly, flash! And Roger was back. "Whoa!" screamed Roger. "That was awesome! I could see and hear you all and was trying to talk back to you, but you couldn't hear me." "That's because you were a toy, you plonker," laughed Jack. Then, suddenly, without warning, he reached for the felt hat and plonked it on his head. Flash! And there in Jack's space was a little square tin. It looked brand new. It was red and yellow and blue with a gold trim and stars decorating each face. There was a little handle on the side. "What on earth is that? And where is Jack?" screeched Jack's best friend William W. with panic on his face. "It's a jack-in-a-box," replied Miss Hart calmly. "Have you not seen one before?" All the children shrugged their shoulders and kind of shook their heads. Of course, if Jack had turned into a Nintendo Switch or a Nerf gun, then they would have recognised it straight away. But no, they'd never seen a jack-in-a-box before. Have you? Miss Hart leaned forwards and gently picked up the little colourful box. She started turning the handle on the side, and the children heard a strange tinny music playing. "Half a pound of tuppenny rice, half a pound of treacle, that's the way the money goes. Pop goes the weasel." And the lid pinged off the top and out popped Jack. Well, it was a toy version of Jack at least. He had a white face, red painted cheeks, and a little clown hat on the top of his head, decorated with a purple feather. He was wearing a red and white shirt and had little wooden hands poking out the sleeves. "There he is," said Miss Hart. "See, nothing to worry about." And she pulled the hat straight off Jack's head. Everyone watched as the hat regrew and reshaped until it looked like the old felt hat from before. Then they waited for Jack to return too. Suddenly, there was the familiar flash, and Jack was sitting on the floor in front of Miss Hart, looking rather pleased with himself. "Right," exclaimed Miss Hart, holding the hat rather firmly in her hands. "I think we might need to put this hat somewhere safe so we don't spend all day turning into toys. Don't you?" appealed to the children. Please, can we have a go? Please, please, please. Miss Hart thought carefully. And then, as we all knew she would, she relented and agreed that all the children could have a turn with the hat. They watched as Immy turned into a wooden dressing up doll. Emily turned into a character from a movie. William W. became a Mr. Potato Head. David was an amazing silver robot which could walk and talk. William M. was a stretchy man. Ed stretched his arms as wide as they would go and they pinged straight back to normal, thankfully. Lucy turned into a fashion doll with pink hair. And Nora was an adorable, cuddly teddy. Ed became a rubber duck, which had everyone in hysterics. And John transformed into a skeleton, which immediately collapsed into a pile of bones. Erica was incredibly excited, waiting for her turn. And when it came, she found herself transformed into a unicorn. She had 4 hooves and a brilliant purple mane, and on her back was a row of silvery stars. She was very proud, and she beamed up at her friends who looked enormous from down there. Then she saw Miss Hart's huge hand coming towards her. And she took the hat off and suddenly she was Erica again. The children had the most amazing morning with the magical hat. But afterwards, Miss Hart did insist on keeping it locked in her cupboard. I think it was a good idea, don't you? They were allowed to have the magical hat out on special occasions only, and only when supervised, and only when inside the Enchanted Classroom. Miss Hart even tried it on one day and turned into a delightful pink rag doll with string pigtails and her favourite pink cord dress. What a fabulous adventure in the Enchanted Classroom. Can you believe the children were actually disappointed when Miss Hart brought out a bag of hats? How wrong they were. Thank you for joining me. See you next week for Chapter 3.